Hey guys, it's Kate and hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm doing a voiceover on this landscape mountain sunset painting to talk about a few of the things I learned doing this painting. I've got it sped up only at about 1.5 times real speed, so it's going to show the full process and everything, but I just wanted to give you kind of a quick view on the process that I used. So I went into my Marie's Masters palette, and the first color I had pulled out was that cadmium red, which is that orangish color in there. And I also went into alizarin crimson and some Payne's gray. And I will start with the first thing I learned. So I'm working on cotton paper. I sprayed both sides so that it would sit flat while it was working wet and wet. And as you can tell, I have a lot of moisture on the paper, which is okay, but the first thing I did was I very much overworked the sky. And I think if I had kept it very simple with those sort of nice orangey streaks, I would have had a lot better success. And so I ended up really liking the sky as it turned out in the final version, but I overworked it a ton and I had to do a lot of fixing. And you can see that here where I'm just really trying to blot back, trying to get that brightness back in. And so then I end up overcompensating, and you can even see some of the sort of tissue marks from dragging the tissue across the page instead of blotting. And I think what I would have done differently would be to blot it very well and just either start over or blot it back as best I could, wait for it to dry, and add another layer. Because the beginning very light wash actually looked a lot better than this, and I could have always added to it. But it's just some of those lessons you get. And then another thing is I used a Q-tip there and I dragged that too. And if you notice, it left this little bit of a line where it kind of broke down the paper a little bit. And you'll notice that, I think, probably throughout the rest of the painting. That actually never goes away, but I can't remember if I cover it with paint or not. And one of the things that I think is really important for videos like this is that, I'm able to show my mistakes as well as my successes. And I think overall this painting turned out really well, but I definitely learned some things. And I think that that's important to kind of sit and reflect on, what you could still use work on, what you may have done really well. And I think for this particular painting, I had some really nice successes too that we'll get to once we get to that part. But you can still see me here on my first layer, still overworking the sky, trying to blot back, and then you can see that line there with that Q-tip just gets darker and darker, and that won't blot up at all. So it's just part of the painting now. And so now we're dry, and I'm going back in with a very light layer of Payne's gray to start off that mountain. And this is the first mountain way in the background with the kind of fog coming off of it and the snow caps. And if you want to get this photo to work on yourself, it is available on Unsplash for free, and I'll link it below. But one of the really fun things that I enjoyed doing was that sort of fogginess coming off the mountain. And I discovered it was a lot of fun to make, kind of like clouds. And I even added some extra where it wasn't even in the reference photos. So that was pretty fun. And the clouds were really enjoyable to do. And I actually used them to help kind of make some corrections on that sky. I wish in the end I had gotten a little bit more of that red in there, but I think for how much I worked on it, it turned out better than I might have hoped. And so I'm just sort of working on getting soft edges there for those sort of soft clouds in the sky. You can see definite lines going across, but they're all soft edges. And so I'm just trying to capture the light, which I think, I wasn't as successful at as I wanted to be, but I didn't do a terrible job. But then I really love how that fog turned out. I got nice soft edges there and just sort of those wispy, those wispy little foggy spots. And I'm also kind of adding some water and blotting where some of that snow cap area is. And I'm just sort of adding a little bit of texture there. And I'm actually going to go in and do a little bit of negative painting around those after it dries again. Because if you look at the reference photo, even though it's snow, and the first thing you think of when you think of snow is, oh, snow's white, it's actually even a darker gray than that sky. It's the same color gray as that fog coming off that totally covers the sky background. And so I really spent a little bit of time considering that photo and trying to get my values right. And I think that I did pretty well there, and the negative painting that I did to kind of block in the snow where it should be, or in the general area where it should be, was really helpful. But the important thing for me to do then was to do it when it was dry. So you can see me adding some extra fog there that doesn't even exist in the photo, but it was so fun to do, I just kept adding more. So I'm just sort of looking at my painting, seeing if I missed anything. I'm trying to work in definite layers, and now here I'm going in and I'm looking at the photo and adding in some darker areas around where the snowy spots are. So I'm just kind of going around and leaving that gray there, but making the rest of the mountain a little bit darker so that it more closely matches the value in the photo. And I'm going down to approximately the level where my next mountain will start. And if you're looking at the reference photo, and as I was planning out my layers, and you can see the mountains kind of, they do two things as they get closer to you. One is they warm up in tone, they get a little bit bluer, and they also get darker. So I made sure to start off with that Payne's gray in the furthest mountain, which is a nice cool dark bluish gray. And then I added actually ultramarine blue, which is kind of a warm blue tone, to that mix as we got closer to each layer. And there I go again back in the sky. I just can't leave it alone. And so now I'm getting the idea that yes, I need to blot and not rub so much. And I'm just trying to just add in some of that brightness up there that I lost by adding just so much and overworking it so much. Now I'm going in with my scrubby brush, which really helps lift paint. And I think I'm a little bit successful there, but it's just not where I really wanted to be. But I did have some luck with that brush. It's very scrubby, and if you use it on a cellulose paper, it'll probably make it pill a lot. So I've got some more of that Payne's gray, and I'm sort of loosely following the direction of the next layer of mountain. So as you can see, I'm adding in that layer, going straight down to the bottom, because everything is just going to be another layer getting darker as we go. And if you're looking at my paint mixture in the mixing well, you can see that it's a combination of that Payne's gray and ultramarine blue. So I warmed it up a bit, but it's still pretty much Payne's gray, but a darker level. And then I add a little bit more darkness to the top of my sky, because as I keep going back and forth between my mountains and my reference photo, I see that the very top of the photo is pretty dark, like that third or fourth level of mountains toward you in the photo. So I'm just kind of being conscious of that and trying to keep those values kind of matching. So I'm just blotting a little bit, adding some of that sort of gray haziness back in, and then once that dries, I'm going to go into my next level. And you can see in the photo, there's kind of this thin strip of mountains, and then there's another layer in front of it. So I'm going across and then bringing that straight down, and my mixture has even more ultramarine in it. And I'm waiting for each layer to completely dry so I don't get any bleed. Now I'm doing my last ditch effort for the sky and adding in some more of that cadmium red. And I think this got closer to where I wanted it, even though I couldn't get a lot of that brightness in there. But I did manage to maintain some of the brightness that's really close to that very last mountain in the background. So I'm pretty happy with that. I just wish I could have captured that rich orange tone better because it was so beautiful in the photo. But I can always try again. So, I mean, I can definitely see what I did wrong in the replay and while I was working on it for that matter. So I'm just kind of taking some time up here while I'm waiting for that bottom layer to dry. Now, one thing I also learned that we'll get to once I start doing that next layer is you'll see in the photo there's a couple of little overlapping mountains, and so one thing I thought would work well, and it did, is in that sort of second and, well, really the next layer of mountains, you can see it's actually two. There's sort of a hump on the right side that I'm painting right now, and then there's actually another mountain that goes in front of it, but I really wanted to try to just get the whole thing so that it would be a nice even layer. And so I ended up painting that whole layer, and then what I'll do is when it dries again, I'll paint that actual other mountain in front of it like I'm doing right here. And I think that gives you a lot more of an even color layer. And so after this is done, you can see me adding a lot more of the ultramarine, and now I'm also adding some more ultramarine to the sky. So you can see it getting progressively bluer and progressively darker and warmer. And so my last layer is just a very, very dark mixture. And I'm making it a little rougher because this layer is closer to you, so you can see, you know, some sort of outlines of trees, and it's the most in shadow and silhouette. And I didn't quite capture the same darkness as the photo, but for my landscape picture, I was really happy with how this turned out. And I really love those layers of hills. It was a great practice on how to just get that value and everything. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and hopefully you will try this as well. And I really thank you for your support. And until next time, keep creating, and thank you for watching. Bye.